Thanks for clicking on Wayne.com for this week's edition of Inside the Zone. It is week 2. He is Justin Kenny of Optimum Performance Sports. I'm Glenn Marini, and how foolishly did we look? I don't know if we did or not.
I mean, we always look foolish.
Right.
Just levels of foolishness.
Speaking of, I realized last week the seats were a little low. It looks like we got them a
Really?
little higher.
Really?
Yeah, that's really, we didn't get any comments on that, but like you guys shrunk or something. No, if anything, we're getting bigger.
Yeah, that's factual, yes.
I've been in the weight room. No, let's talk a little bit about week 1 before we dive into these week 2 matchups, because it's like overreaction time.
Oh, yeah, totally. Either way, both ways, right?
Yes. What did you think about week 1? What's your big takeaway? Because, boy, you look at some of those scores, and you're hoping the SAC could show out against some of those indie teams. By and large, didn't quite happen, but some nice victories for some teams that we normally don't see beat some indie teams.
Well, you teased it kind of overreaction weekend is what we do. If a team loses, oh my God, Adams Central, okay, well, they're down. You look at teams that get wins that traditionally don't. Northrop, now all of a sudden people around Northrop talking about competing for an SAC championship. Like, it's just week 1, folks. Let's pump the brakes on positives and negatives and have more of a sample size. If last year we talked about writing teams off after week 1, Bishop Luers, after losing by 38 to East Noble, was out of there, and instead they won a 2A state championship. So let's just temper the chaos, both positive and negative. Get a bigger sample size before we start making some snap judgments on these programs.
And again, before we dive into week 2 matchups, I want to give the thumbs up to Chris Depew.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, you mentioned the Adams Central game. Garrett was one of the teams that we thought might take a big jump forward this year. They had a great summer in the 7-on-7 circuits. And just talking a little bit about what it meant for Chris Depew to be named the Colts Coach of the Week for the state of Indiana.
The entire state.
The entire state, not just the region.
Yeah.
Winning 20-7 with a real second-half defensive effort against an Adams Central team that scored first in the first quarter.
Yeah.
Did not score again the rest of the game.
It was huge for Garrett, and we've talked about in our show last week about how big it would be for Garrett to have a really good team this year. No environment's any better than Garrett on a Friday night when that team is really good. They were able to come out and play really well. Adams Central, yeah, they got some new guys, some young guys. It's going to take a little bit for them, but that was advantage Garrett, right? Because Garrett had a lot of guys coming back in key positions, particularly at quarterback. They were able to make plays late in that first half that really kind of propelled them to that win. And that is a win for Garrett and for Chris Depew after the last couple years with the program, kind of just, not really getting over the hump there and being a couple of 500 seasons. This is a win where you can really get excited about Garrett football, and we'll see if that can carry over into week 2. Which do they have, DeKalb?
DeKalb.
Yeah.
It's a county rivalry game at DeKalb. That's on my list to talk about. Let's go to our game of the week for week 2. And this is a game I think a lot of people want to see. It's East Noble at Snider. It's going to be our highlight zone game of the week. They met in week 2 last year up in Kendallville with Snider winning that one 45-28. We didn't know how good Snider was going to be, I think, at that point last year. We were not 100% sure. And then they go and march off and win a 5A state title. So for a 4A team to put up 28 and fared fairly well against Snider, that was also a feather in East Noble's cap. If you're East Noble, pretty good start to the Alex Stewart era. How do you see this one playing out after a 42-6 win at home against Bremen in week 1 for East Noble?
Yeah, gave up that early touchdown to Bremen and then didn't give up anything the rest of the game. Snider struggled against Warren Central. Couldn't get much offensively. What was it, less than 50 yards of total offense for them. They were 0 for on third down. First time they've been shut out in over 10 years. And so you feel like, okay, Snider coming back in week 2, this is kind of a prove it week. We know what kind of practices are going on out at Snider this week after the performance on Friday, regardless of who it was against, Warren Central or whoever. So this is a bounce back week for Snider. I think East Noble also wants to prove something that they can compete, which they did last year. They competed with Snider in that loss, but they want to prove they can compete. And these are the games more and more that I want to see between NE8 and SAC. We saw it last week with Leo and Luers. I want to see Snider and East Noble. I want to see Columbia City play Dwenger. I want to see these games because it's so much of the conversation around here is who's better and in which league. And for a long time, we couldn't have that in the SAC with 10 teams and 9 regular season games. So these are the games that I look forward to. Yeah, everybody gets hype about playing Brownsburg and HSE and Warren, but give me Snider and East Noble. Give me Luers and Leo, man.
Yeah, when you take a look at Snider, I was at that game for the whole first half. Scoreless at halftime. I mean, we shot the whole first half, and nothing happened. Warren Central's defense is great. I mean, by high school standards, it is a great defense. Damian Shanklin is all that he's cracked up to be.
He's going to LSU for a reason.
He's
right?
going to LSU. You got the Burris kid. You got the
Louisville?
Finch kid.
Yeah.
I mean, their defense was as good as Snider is going to see this year. The fact that they were not as productive on offense doesn't scare me that much if I'm Kurt Tippmann, because you're breaking in a new starting quarterback. What would concern me more, though, and this is probably what he's focusing on in practice this week, was the penalties and the times that they shot themselves in the foot.
Right.
You know, to have those guys dominate against your offense defensively, not as big concern in week one, but just the self-imposed mistakes is not something you're used to seeing with Snider, and I know that's something they're going to want to clean up this week.
Definitely, and those are things that when you look at the coaching staff over at Snider is, okay, you had your one game, we don't make those mistakes again. You know, when you look at a lot of new offensive linemen, a new quarterback, is, okay, you got the jitters out. Now now you're veterans. Okay, you're one game in. So those are going to be expectations that Snider's coaching staff is going to set and say those mistakes don't happen again. You had your 1 week mulligan. Now you come back more refined. So I don't know if it was nerves. I don't know what it was. It was just the fact you're playing Warren across the field, and Warren Central is a legit 6A state title contender for sure. So for me, I think you look at it and say, yeah, you need to clean up some of those things. But offensively, that offensive front needs to get a better push. You need to see Aaron Vance be more comfortable in the pocket. The defense played really well.
They did.
The defense was not a problem. When we had Brandon Logan and
forcing
and
turnovers.
Landon Fry, I mean, the defense played well, and I think maybe we're overlooking that because we're looking at the struggles of the offense.
Right.
Is saying that defense is legit. And we knew it was, and we thought that's the best defensive unit in the SAC. I think they proved it Friday. Everyone wants to focus on the offensive struggles, but that defense is for real.
When you're talking about East Noble, the big question coming into the season was Riley Biddle at the quarterback position, because Xander Brazel had been there so long, whether it's throwing the ball or just simply running the offense.
Right.
He'd been pretty effective. They mostly ran the football, at least early on, to establish themselves. I think that's the question here, is if Snider's able to take away the run, now do we see what has to happen in the passing game, and does Riley Biddle get his chance maybe to have some opportunities to throw the football a little bit more in a meaningful section of the game?
And he's a solid quarterback. We've kind of been waiting for him to ascend to that
Yeah.
QB1 spot with Brazel, and now he's graduated. But then if you're forced into those obvious passing downs when you have to throw against Jamarion Collie Bodie and Brandon Logan and Landon Fry and those guys at the second and third levels, that's going to be an issue. Adam Blakey can get pressure off the edge. That causes some things. So this is going to be a better barometer for the Snider Panthers this week. Everybody kind of, that first week, oh, Carroll's not as good, or Snider's not as good, is like, I look at those games in Indy as those are barometers. I don't really care win or loss. I just care about how they look and what they learn going forward, and that's how coaches' staffs look at it too. We'll see what some of these teams have learned out of week one and how it translates into week two.
Yeah, you got Moeller at Dwenger this week, Carroll at Center Grove, Noblesville at Homestead. Those are going to be some tough rows to hoe for our local teams. Lures is at New Haven. I want to talk about some of these other teams because our first impression of some of these guys was pretty good. Lawrence North is at Northside. Northside fared pretty well. Like, Northridge is not an easy place to go up. It's a solid football program historically. And they showed out, and it was Tristan Newsome not only passing, but running the ball. It seemed like offensively they took care of business when you look at the stats in pretty much every area.
They did. That was a team in Northridge that beat Northside last year at Chambers Field that kind of maybe set the tone for Northside's 3-win season, because that was a game we felt like they could win last year. Now they're 1-0. You mentioned Tristan Newsome. There was some questions on where Northside was going to go at QB1 entering the season. You had a freshman that was tinkering. Maybe he was going to get playing time. Maybe he still will. But through 1 week, Tristan Newsome, as advertised, 350-some yards of total offense. The sophomore Caleb Kiangale, who we saw last year at a wide receiver, at his natural position of running back, over 200 yards rushing on Friday. It was a big win for Northside. Now they play a Lawrence North team that you feel good going in there, that they can be 2-0 and head into the conference season on a high. So, yeah, that Northside team, which maybe we thought too much of last year, maybe we were doubting them a little bit heading into this year. But again, it's all about consistency. Get that week one win, that's great. Got to come back and win again.
Yeah, and Jamari Pearson, a wide receiver, opens up the offense as well, because you can't just gang up on those two guys in the backfield that you mentioned. South Bend Riley at Wayne. Wayne goes down to Crispus Attucks, gets a win in overtime. Nice defensive performance from Kemar Nelson.
I think he just had another tackle, I think, actually.
this just in. They face South Bend Riley this week, and we've been waiting for one of Sherwood Haydock's teams at Wayne to get over the hump.
Yeah.
Could this be the team, and this is a South Bend Riley team that comes in 1-0 in the season,
Right.
Could this be, the start of something special for the Wayne Generals this year?
That was that X factor, that team that we looked at and say the pieces are there. Can they put everything together to compete and maybe win that B division championship in the SAC? And through 1 week, it was exceptional. I mean, with Kamar Nelson being able to do what he did, and you look at the offense really being a hum. Now you worry, okay, can that team get enough stops over the course of the season against the Lures, against the Northside, those division games that they're going to have to win? But through 1 week, I mean, they look pretty good. And if they can come back and get another win, 2-0, I mean, get those dubs in the non-conference, build up that confidence before you head into conference play.
I'm actually really excited to see Northrop at Huntington North.
I am going to that game.
Are you really?
Yes,
okay.
Because we're going to talk about the same thing here.
Okay.
With Northrop and
I'm not sure if you can stop Northrop's offense. We didn't know.
Right.
We weren't sure. I don't know how good of a barometer New Haven is this year for what Northrop has, but my goodness, they have a lot of wide receivers.
They do.
They love to get them the ball, and it seems like they were clicking. They need to obviously get some more defensive stops.
That would help.
When you give up 40-plus points, but you still win.
Yes.
They're at least going to be entertaining to me
this
season. Meanwhile, Huntington North won one game last year. They go down to beat it's 2A, but a solid Eastbrook program, historically 2A, a solid Eastbrook program on the road in week 1. I don't know.
I know. Seriously.
I kind of want to see it.
That's exactly why I'm going. I want to see Northrop. New Haven, all respect to them. That defense, though, is, and then Huntington North going down and beating Eastbrook by 17 points, a team they'd never beaten before in their program history. We know what Eastbrook does. They like to pack things in. They like to grind it out. Huntington North's in their second year of their little spread that they do with Coach Mike Eschbach. And one of those teams is going to be 2-0, and it's going to shock all of us. So whether Northrop can continue that and show some signs defensively, we know they can throw the ball and sling it around with David Callison and his cadre of wide receivers. What about Huntington North? I'm with you, man. I'm heading to that game on Friday because, mix it up a little bit. Huntington North and Northrop, why not?
It's always exciting when somebody steps to the forefront that we didn't necessarily expect. It's good stuff. Speaking of, Concordia, 0 wins last year. Here we are in week 2 of 2024. They've got already 1 win.
Right.
Beat an Indy team in Indianapolis-Scecina that game up. And you have to feel good about what Tim Anagol's got. As we mentioned, I think, last week, they had 3 seniors last year. Just by the fact that they have 15 seniors this year that played a ton last year, you have to feel better about. We weren't sure how many wins it would equate to because of the SAC and how tough it can be, but they're definitely a better football team than they were a year ago.
And who knows, how many wins they can get in the SAC, we'll see, but that's precisely why the first 2 weeks of non-conference are so great to have, is because Concordia can step out. They play a Scecina team that traditionally is good, then they're down and struggling, but Concordia was able to take advantage. Now they play Eastbrook this week.
They can do it again.
Maybe, can Concordia be 2-0 at this point? So
I like it.
That's the beauty of it, and so much attention is always put on who's Homestead playing and Snider playing and Carroll playing in the non-conference. But look at last week, you have Northrop get a big win. You have a big game with Leo and Bishop Lures over on the south side of town. You have Wayne get a win. You have Southside almost get a win. You have Concordia get a win. Northside get a win. I love looking elsewhere and seeing what wins are doing for these programs in the non-conference in the SAC, because those are program builders. That's why I was so hoping that Southside was able to pull it out, because that would have been a huge dub. I just focus more on those games than the upper echelon. It's just, that's why I went to Leo Lures last week. That's why I'm going to Northrop Huntington North, man. Give those 2 local teams playing that traditionally don't play. I'll take that all day long. Yeah,
for sure. When you take a look at some other games outside the SAC this week, as Concordia will travel to Eastbrook, as you mentioned, we've got Leo at Angola. Angola played okay against DeKalb. Hawk Hasselman had a couple big plays. And then you've got Garrett at DeKalb as far as some games featuring Northeast 8 teams that are of interest this week. How do you see these 2 playing out? Because Leo's obviously riding high.
Right.
We weren't sure about the quarterback position. They made plays when it mattered. And you take a look at that Angola team, they're pretty excited about what they have up there. They're trying to keep it on the down low.
Yeah, they're young, but
they do have a lot of juniors that play, but they like what they have there, at least for the future, for sure.
Let's get Hawk Hasselman some help. for sure down in Angola. I mean,
I just like to say Hawk Hassel.
I mean,
like,
yeah.
It's the coolest name in Northeast Indiana. It's Hawkins. It goes by Hawk.
Yes,
it's,
goes by
but
Hawk.
So would I. Like,
Yeah,
it's
for
way
sure.
cooler.
Why not?
Way cooler.
But, Angola, Hawk Hasselman is one of the best kept secrets in this area because Angola has struggled the last couple of years, but he is legit up in Angola and still an underclassman. I think you look at Leo as the high they're coming off of winning at Lures, cannot afford a letdown. And Angola's good enough to make them pay. And then conversely, Garrett and DeKalb. Garrett, of course, got that big win. DeKalb, I think, with what they have, is every bit of as good as anybody else outside the top two teams in the NE8, at least right now. So those are two games that are up there that are going to be pretty entertaining and see what those teams can do.
Let's talk about Eastside at Adams Central, because that was a game I had circled early in the season. I don't know how much of a damper it puts on Adams Central with the loss at Garrett. I think you're just kind of reshuffling things at this point. Let's not put too much on it. Eastside beats Woodland last week, 25-11. How do you see this one playing out? Because these are two programs that are historic, over the last 5-6 years, have been competing for a conference title in their respective conference.
Yeah, they're pretty powerful, and I think you look at Adams Central and say, okay, how do they bounce back? And it's similar to Snider, and both had losing efforts. Like, okay, we got the jitters out the first game, the young guys, the newbies. Okay, now you need to start performing. And I think for Adams Central, that's exactly what the message is going to be this week. And the challenge is big for facing Lincoln Carter and Eastside, and what they were able to do with Coach Alex Brandewy last Friday. So for me, I think you look at Adams Central and say they're still, in my opinion, the best team in the ACAC, and I think by a considerable margin. But in terms of can this team be a factor in the 2A playoffs, these are the games that I'm going to judge them on and say, yeah, because the last 3 years we said, yeah, ACAC and state. But is it ACAC and a deep run in 2A, or is this maybe an AC team that is kind of a reloading year?
We had a request to discuss, I'm throwing a curveball at you a little bit. We had a request to discuss the Warsaw at Warren Central game.
Oh, I didn't even know they were playing.
Now, this is interesting to me from the fact that, Snider last week obviously got shut out by Warren Central. And a lot of it had to do with that defensive line, defensive front. But Warsaw, they had so many new pieces, did Snider, that they were trying to figure things out against maybe the best defense in the state.
Right.
Warsaw knows exactly what they're going to do. They've got the quarterback back. They've got Bart Curtis and his system, Bart Ball, Wishbone. They've got it fully ingrained in what they do. I think they're a better matchup to a certain degree simply because they're going to go strength on strength in this one.
For sure, and playing Bart Ball and defending that is not easy when you only have a week to prepare, for sure. Congratulations to Bart Curtis, win number 150 last week, by the way. These are the games, too, that it works the same for Warsaw. Playing Warren Central is only going to help them get better for the 6A playoffs. This is a Warsaw program that the last couple years, we used to look at Warsaw and say, okay, they're up there in their little bubble, that's fine, but when they play a Fort Wayne school, they're going to be out in the playoffs. But that hasn't been the case recently. Ask Carol last week about, or last year about that. So Bart Curtis is now expanding the horizons a little bit. Like, okay, what else can we do in 6A in the north here? We're going to start challenging ourselves similar to these SAC schools. So, yeah, I think that's one to watch. If Warsaw can be competitive in that game, which I feel like Snider was competitive in the game against Warren Central, then you're going, okay, come October, that's really going to help them. And I think Snider's going to use that. And if it works out for Warsaw, they could do the very same thing.
What are you most looking forward to here in week 2?
There's a lot of area matchups that are really intriguing. We talked about a lot of them. We talked about Northrop going to Huntington North. We talked about, Garrett and DeKalb. We talked about Eastside and Adams Central. I know the upper echelon teams are challenging themselves, and that's great for the fan base. For me, I'm looking at some of these area matchups and really kind of trying to piece together who's legit and who's not, and having some bragging rights.
NE8 versus SAC, that's kind of what it's about this week.
8 games over 2 weeks, let's just do it. Homestead and Carroll will never do it for reasons obvious after getting effectively thrown out of the NHC. But 4 games each week, SAC NE8 for the first 2 weeks.
Bam! You heard it here first.
When we make the suggestion and we make the more important people actually work out the details.
That's true. The important people don't watch the show, so they will never get to them. But you do, and we appreciate it, and we'll be back next Monday for a Week 3 edition of Inside the Zone already. He's Justin. I'm Glenn. We'll see you next Monday.